Senator Scullion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I think we can all recall in this place a pretty significant day in the diary of this Parliament, the 24th of June in 2010, where Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister, and Labor actually deposed the very first term, for the first time, a first-term Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd. And what they said, Mr Deputy President, was that the government had lost its way. They had lost their way. Obviously this was Kevin 07's fault, so we'll cut his throat, slide him aside, and we're going to get back on with the job of fixing this up.
Senator Scullion, just to order for a moment, Senator Scullion, you must refer to members of the other House by the correct title or the correct name and salutation.
I'll withdraw on Kevin Rudd. And there could be no more visible example about how bad that they had then failed at that stage was than that of their border control and protection policy. When Kevin Rudd and the Labor had won government in August of 2007, I think all around the world would look to the policies that the coalition government had been put in place, and you could say that in any term of any comparison, it had been a very, very effective suite of policies. When I came to this place in 2002, I can recall in that financial year there was 3,099 people had arrived on 19 boats, 54 the year before, 75 the year before. And certainly it was a very, very serious circumstance, and we needed to address that. And we did. We introduced temporary protection visas. We made sure there was offshore processing. There was a number of regional agreements to interfere with the process of people smuggling, and it worked. Not just on my say-so, Mr Deputy President, but it worked because I think the statistic that is the starkest, as I said, we went from 3,039 people and 19 boats to 0 people and 0 boats. I think that the reason that the spotlight of the international community that were working very hard against the international criminal organisations of people trafficking looked very carefully at Australia for their example about how well they had done. But of course, when the then Prime Minister, Mr Rudd, took over as the Prime Minister of Australia, they just simply thought the problem was solved. Problem's solved, so we just get straight on with the job of saying, well, don't worry about those policies. After all, our motive is not that we need to protect Australia and protect the people who are refugees around the world from the pressures from international people smuggling. What we want to do is to make sure that we have some electoral benefit. It's not a problem for us. Things are solved in that area. And so there's this, the process about preferential voting, of course, means that we needed to toss up whether or not we thought about this nation's interest or we thought about the electoral interest of the Labor Party. And of course, Mr Deputy President, here comes the nub. The Greens and those others, independents, who were talking about having a more compassionate approach. And of course, all the wisdom around the world said, no, don't do that. This is a really good set of policies that protects people, that looks after people, ensures that they don't make this very, very ugly voyage to Australia. And of course, immediately that those policies were implemented in the interest of the Australian Labor Party, it really destroyed the border protection that was in the interest of this nation. Mr Deputy President, and for those in this chamber and for those others listening, this is always the problem with Labor. It goes to motive. Why do you do a thing? Why do you have a policy? Is it in the interest of the Labor Party or is it in our national interest? And I think more and more Australians are starting to put the ruler of motive across policies that we see rolled out by those opposite. And so the trade was back on. And I don't know how many times I've sat in here and heard the Leader of Government, Senator Evans, say, no, it's not our policies that have changed it. Something odd happening in Europe, something odd happening somewhere else, perhaps something happening with the climate. I'm not sure, there's been a whole range of excuses. But of course, international policymakers everywhere have come down and understood clearly, if you change a policy and the consequence is a major rush of vessels, and now we see when they've taken over in 2007, of course we've gone straight up from 3 boats to 1,033 people with 22 boats, 5,614 with 117 boats, and in 2010-11 we got 4,949 in 89 boats. A staggering endorsement of those people who say when you change the policy there will be a consequence. Because they've put their grubby paws on preferential voting for the interests of the Labor Party, they have deserted the interests of this nation. And so we now have the situation, Mr Acting Deputy President, where there are some 15 million mandated refugees around the world, and as an Australian, like every Australian, our heart would go to them. These are sometimes stateless people. 15.4 million people looking for somewhere else to be. And so what Australia's decided, rather than as a nation or a country, we'd be part of a group of countries, in fact part of the United Nations process, to identify those in the most need. Australia takes around 13,500 refugees, of which half are taken as the highest priority refugees in the world. Now, it's a very small percentage of the 15.4 million requiring a refugee outcome. And those people have been decided by the UNHCR, decide who those people are, and fundamentally at the moment they come from the Horn of Africa. And those people who find themselves in camps like Kakuma in the Horn of Africa will know well the circumstances. The reason why they have been chosen as those in the most need is because they live in the most horrific circumstances. Their life expectancies are so low compared with those other refugees in other parts of the world. And I've had some staggering statistics put to me, where we have children who are under 4 years of age for a period of time have a life expectancy of less than 6 months. That's why they're on the priority list. That's why those people must be priorities to come to Australia. And so importantly, the other half of the 13,500 refugees, they are part of the Family Reunification Humanitarian Scheme, which ensures the diaspora of refugees, as they're flung around the countryside, are able to come together again, are able to join as a family again and come and join their families in Australia. Now that's our contribution, and a very large contribution compared with our population. But of course, under this new arrangement of Labor, we now have people coming from all over the world, and if you can get here in a boat, if you can afford the $8,000 or $10,000 per head to get here on a boat, then you have jumped the queue. Because the people who won't be coming here are the 6,000 people who are the family aspect of that demographic. They won't be coming because their places have been taken by boat people, by people who have just simply come here. Now originally, under the Coalition, we sent a clear message. Don't come here by boat, and if you do, you'll be treated exactly the same way as the place on which you left. And so people stopped coming. The previous Prime Minister came in and said, look, we're going to change all that. Well, we sold our soul to the Greens, to the devil, and that's why we had this situation. Of course, now we have Julia Gillard, the current Prime Minister, has taken her place and said, we have lost our way. We've lost our way on border protection, we've lost our way on the carbon tax, we've lost our way on the mining tax. But most importantly, as an iconic process, they've lost their way on border protection. Well, hello, we know that, but you said you'd fix it. You said you'd fix it. Well, Kevin Rudd failed because he simply was thinking more about the interests of the Labor Party. Julia Gillard still seems to fail because she is more interested in the interests of the Labor Party than in the interest of Australia and Australians. If you want to think about compassion, and if somebody says that the Coalition or those who are interested in a tough border protection policy that sends a clear signal, please don't put your families and lives of your families at risk, the UNHCR will decide who comes to this country, then you should think for a moment about the men and the women, mostly the women and young children in places like Kakuma. Because every time we weaken a policy, Think about, if you're compassionate, think about their lives and how short their lives are. And this Labor Party and those opposite stand absolutely condemned for putting their interests and their own political motives about their relationships with the Greens than they do about our national interests.
Order. Senator Scullion, your time has expired.